Hello and welcome. This is my 2023 Ford F350 STX trim 7.3 gas with 373 gears. And I like to tow things like this that weigh about 18,000 pounds. Why do I have a gasser, you might ask? And do I actually like it? The answer is yes, I do like it quite a bit. A diesel is not the badge of honor that you think it is. So we're going to talk a little bit about why I literally like my 7.3 gas, I think more than my 6.7 in the application that this is. Some of you are going to be new here. If you're not new, first of all, thank you for coming back. And second of all, you might hear some similar ideas. The problem is that these questions get raised literally all the time on social media, so I don't think there's a bad time to reiterate a couple things as we go. So there are a whole group of people that think that you need to have a diesel to do things like this and to do things that are more than this. A lot of you guys are actually towing more than this, and you might be towing less than this but with a gooseneck. So what are some reasons why you'd want either one? Well, here's a couple of reasons why you'd want to have a gas engine. We're going to talk first a little bit about the real performance aspect, and then we'll talk a little bit more about just the way it makes you feel. We'll get to the feeling part a little bit later. This is an F350, and if you're towing bigger stuff like this, I recommend that you have an F350. Why? Because the payload does matter. And when you have probably somewhere around 2,200, 2,600 pounds of tongue load, it matters to have a heck of a decent amount of spring rate in the back of the truck and whatnot. You can get an F250 with a heavy payload package, whether it's a camper package, a plow prep. Those things, now the plow prep probably is going to help your rear axle's gross axle weighting, but it would help your fronts. So make sure when you do this, you figure out total weight on each axle, and that includes that axle and this axle, because your front axle and your rear axle together make up your total payload. But if you're not transferring any weight to the front of the truck, which you basically transfer zero weight with a conventional hitch, and if anything, you lift weight off the front of the truck from how much it weighed before, and if you have a gooseneck, you basically don't transfer any weight forward. You may, if you have an offset ball, you might be able to, if you have like a 4-inch offset ball, they do make them where they go both forward and aft to move your weight around a little bit. You could bring a little bit to the front. We're talking a couple hundred pounds here. When you have a pin load of 2,000 or 3,000 pounds, a couple hundred pounds is basically nothing. If you have a conventional hitch, there's a whole group of people who really like weight distribution hitches. I hate weight distribution hitches. I won't use them. And for the simple fact of all that rigmarole and all that preventing of the flexing that I want to have right here, I want to have my truck and my trailer be able to move independently of each other and not transfer a whole bunch of torsional load into the frame, not transfer a whole bunch of torsional load into the truck. If you were to put a weight distribution hitch on, and I'm assuming that we're at 2,200 to 2,400 pounds probably of tongue weight, maybe it's 26, I don't know, it's a lot. You might put 200 or 300 pounds, if that, back onto the front by having all that rigmarole. I think having the flexing between the two vehicles and preventing that torsional load that's going to for sure damage the frame right there where it's going to pivot, and it's going to probably damage your trailer hitch and truck frame over time. They work okay when you have a lightweight trailer. When you start getting this heavy, I want to have that free flexing movement between the two. So we're talking about quite a bit of weight here, and we're talking about a truck that I can park, whether I go to Little Caesars and go pick up a pizza, I can go to Meijer, I can go to Sam's Club, I can go do whatever I want to do in my crew cab, short bed, 4-wheel drive, single wheel pickup truck. I love this truck for what I do because it does everything that I do exceedingly well. And one of the things that I learned about with my 6.7 was that my 6.7 was a hell of a lot better engine than the truck was. And that's not saying the truck is bad. What it's saying is that there's a limitation to your towing performance when you have the limitation of a single rear wheel. Potentially you have mud tires or all-terrain tires. Maybe you have the truck lifted. Maybe you have, whatever the heck you're doing. There's a limitation as to how good this thing is going to tow. And this 7.3 gas engine, which I adore, allows this truck to fully perform to its max with a lot of weight behind it. So to me, it's like, why are you paying extra to have more than you need? What are you getting with a diesel? You're probably getting a little bit better fuel economy in all cases, or you're definitely getting better fuel economy for sure. Empty, you're probably getting a little bit better loaded too. Keep in mind that diesel's still going to get with a load like this down by, 12, 13 miles a gallon. It's going to be right in there. So when we're getting, 9 or 10, the delta is not as much as you might think it is. And deleting isn't necessarily the answer. I have a buddy who has a really sassy 2016 or 15, whatever one it is, steel body 6.7. It's a really nice truck. It runs phenomenal. It doesn't get that great of fuel economy. When he drives it hard, my 7.3, when we went on a trip together going the same places, actually got better fuel economy than he got, and I was towing a small trailer, and he was empty. But he did tell me that he took it on a road trip, actually drove like a human being instead of going Mach 10 everywhere, and he got like 18. So being deleted isn't necessarily the godsend that deleting like a 6.7 Cummins was back then. The 6.7 Cummins is a really reliable too, but a very efficient engine. And when you do delete it, you actually gain quite a lot of fuel economy performance out of the engine. But you're not getting a crazy amount out of the setup because it isn't as efficient of an engine. Now, I'm not downing the 6.7 Powerstroke. I love the 6.7 Powerstroke. It is a remarkably smooth, very well-sorted engine. The emission system is super reliable. I never had a problem with mine, never had a problem with DEF, never had a problem with the emission system. That was not an issue. And I do believe that the 6.7 retained its value better. I think that when I sold my truck, I would have lost more percentage of my initial purchase had it been a gas truck, especially the 6.2 that was there at the time. The 6.2 is a really reliable engine. It does not tow as well as 7.3 does. These trucks are going to, I think, define the market where previous gassers like the 6.0 Chevy stands out as being a remarkably reliable, very smooth, very easy to modify, very easy to tune. You can get a lot out of a 6.0 Chevy, but they're in a truck that doesn't compare to this truck. They have IFS. Solid axle is way better in every single possible way. And talking about 2023 and up, these ride remarkably well. The only time that this truck rides poorly, being that it is an F350 with 4,381 pounds of payload, is when you get onto a very, very rutted out washboard road. When you're slowed down to 10 mile an hour or 8 mile an hour or 6 mile an hour and it's still bumpy, you're getting shook to death in this truck. But it rides remarkably well on surfaces where you can carry a little bit of speed. You're letting your tires diameter work for you and bridging over top of things. It rides really, really well in that way. And in my opinion, it rides better than my F250 did. I test drove, and I made a video about it, a 2024 L5P Duramax 2500, had about 1,000 pounds less payload than this truck does, or a little bit more than that. And this truck easily rode better than that truck did. So IFS is not the saving grace that I think a lot of people think that it is. However, that Gen 2 L5P, it's a nice little motor. Definitely very smooth. I could totally see owning one of those if people have a good GM discount. See, I'm off on a tangent here. If you have a good GM discount, you might consider the L5P, and I would for sure consider it way before I consider 6.6 gasser. I would personally not recommend those to anyone between the oil consumption issues and just the fact they don't tow as well as 7.3. I just would rather have a 7.3. Anyway, so we got a little off the beaten path here. Just because you have 4,380 pounds of payload, some of that payload is coming from the weight-bearing capacity of the front axle. If you can't transfer some weight up front, then you can't use all of that payload. So when you put humans in the truck and whatever, you're getting some weight up front. So you can't just put a pin load of 4,200 pounds on this thing and expect that you're not going to overload the rear axle of your truck. That is where a F350 or an F450 or an F350 dually or an F450 comes in as being the superior option for a heavyweight towing vehicle. But there are some downsides. Long beds, they're long. Regular cabs, if you want to keep the wheelbase short, you'd have a shorter wheelbase if you had a regular cab long bed than this, and it would park better. Even though it would be wider, it'd still turn pretty good. And an F450, of course, with a regular cab would be awesome, except for it's a regular cab. There's no room. A lot of us have families. A lot of people are choosing to buy a heavy-duty pickup truck as opposed to buying a sedan. Sedans have kind of gone by the wayside, and people are buying things like trucks. And having that four-door option is imperative to bringing your stuff with you, your people with you, your animals with you, and, your stuff, your bags. So, crew cab to me is just kind of like a given. And if I need to constrain myself to having a good daily driver, and the beauty of this truck is that it does everything well. So far, it's been very reliable. It parks very well, turns very well. I can easily back it into tight parking spaces if I want to. I park on the outside or in the back, so I don't have to worry about that because I don't want my truck keyed. But it's just a really nice truck. And the reality is that the 7.3 fully exploits the capabilities of this chassis when you're towing heavy weight. If you're towing small stuff, that is kind of where the diesel comes in, and that's kind of why I bought mine. And we talk about it on this channel, kind of like a diesel is the weekend warriors truck. If you have a lightweight trailer where you can be sporty. Now, I'm going to caution really quick. When I talk about this, I want to caution. Please drive with respect. Think about other people on the road. Think about your tires that you don't want to have go kablooey when you're doing 75, 80 down the highway. And think about a family of four in a minivan that you don't want to clobber. But let's just say you're towing something and you have decided that it is safe in your condition to drive 75, 80, go with the flow of traffic, and you're going up north. Say you have a boat behind you. Say you have a race car trailer. You have a flatbed full of side-by-sides. You have a smaller camper. And it's a weight that this chassis can easily bear and dominate. Basically, 12,000 pounds and under, this chassis dominates 12,000 pounds and under, to the point where you don't feel behind it. So when you have that added performance of the diesel where you can flat fly, you're getting a little bit better fuel economy so you can get a little farther between stops, that is where the diesel comes in. In my opinion, the oxymoron of it, when you start towing really heavy, the advantages of the diesel, in my opinion, fall away to the point where I think that this is a far better option for me. If I was still towing things 10,000 and under, 12,000 and under, where the diesel and this chassis work together and become a hot rod, that is a direction that I would definitely consider going. When you start talking 14,000 pounds and up, you are getting to the upper end of what comfortably a single wheel truck is going to do, where you could easily get this combination up to say 62 miles an hour, set the speed control and go, and feel very confident that if you had to slam on the brakes for a deer, you could get it under control. If you had to swerve for, a kid running out in front of you, within reason, you could do that. Anything above like 62 with this kind of weight, you need to be very, very careful. When it weighs twice as much as the vehicle behind you, that's a really good point to say, hey, wait a minute, we need to treat this like we're walking on eggshells here, because we don't want to have somebody get hurt. We don't want to hurt ourselves. We don't want to hurt our equipment. So with that out of the way. So when I say the 6.7 Powerstroke is not a badge of honor, I am not downing its utility, its reliability, its smoothness. Diesels are fun. They drive very differently than gas engines. Right off idle, they have a very powerful presence, and they're very fun to drive. They make nice noises, especially when it's cold outside. And we're going to say the exact same thing about this in just a moment. This engine makes a phenomenal noise when it just gets that cool nip. It is September right now. Deer hunting is right around the corner. Cold, crisp, 50 degree, 40, low 40, mid 40 degree mornings are here. And not only do diesels sound really good in that situation, how many of you guys duck hunt or a deer hunt, and maybe you grew up with someone you went with or whatever having a 350 or a 454 or a 351 Windsor or a 460 or whatever, and you got used to, or God forbid, a Dodge product, and you're used to hearing, or you like hearing that gas engine rumble on a cold morning, the dense air just really hitting your eardrums just right. And that is something that I really, really like about this truck. And we're kind of getting to feels here, basically. The feeling of owning a gas truck to me is not inferior. It is not, it's great because my truck was cheaper. I can afford to, instead of spending more money for the exact same truck to do the exact same job, I'm buying cheaper fuel, and I don't believe that I'm burning enough more of it to make buying the cheaper fuel not worth it. I think that I'm getting ahead based on everything that I've looked at. So there's lots of upsides to driving a gas truck. One little very small nuance that I've noticed is that the ballast that you don't have, because you don't have a diesel, with this much weight, you can feel the front end when you hit the brakes rise a little bit when the trailer tugs, when the brakes tug on the hitch and tug on the truck. You can feel the front end rise a little bit. You can feel the little bit of ballast that you get from a diesel, and that's an upside for a diesel. But all in all, the 7.3 is a really awesome option. It's been really good to me. We're going to keep testing it. This thing's not going anywhere. I love this truck. This thing fits my lifestyle so perfect. And the always intention of this combination was to allow me to be able to get my kind of dream tow rig, because I do so many things that require this truck, and I certainly wouldn't opt to have a diesel F350 single wheel and a diesel F450. That's like stupid, in my opinion. That just doesn't make any sense at all. Where this truck, it just does so many things well, to the point where it for sure offsets any need to have a half-ton pickup truck. I have an Expedition as well, so a half-ton SUV, and that vehicle really fills the void that this truck doesn't obviously do, because it's not an Excursion. And it's a really good size, and it's a really decent amount of capacity to fill in, where this truck doesn't always have to do small towing jobs and things like that. With the max tow, the Expedition really kind of works well. But this combination works super well for me is what I'm getting at. If I have any problems, we will definitely report it on the channel, because that's important. So, in conclusion, don't let somebody tell you that a Super Duty is pointless without a diesel, that it won't tow. This truck tows this combination with ease. If it tows this combination with ease, I promise you that it will tow your camper with ease, that it'll tow your boat with ease. This is a very heavy conventional hitch combination, and not only does the chassis and the brakes handle it extremely well, but the advantages that you get by having a single wheel, by having a shorter wheelbase, and by having just all in all a vehicle that isn't so wide, like well, first of all, 450 is wider up front too, but a 350 dually is a good bit wider in the back. You have excellent snow performance, rain performance. There's lots of advantages to sticking with a single wheel. The factory locker is a huge advantage that doesn't get talked about very much. You can't get a factory locker in the rear from Ford with the dually, which I think is really stupid. It's really easy to machine components. It's not that big of a deal to make an M300 locker. Hopefully we'll see something like that in the future, because an e-locker on dual rear wheels would be extremely nice to have. And Ford, if you're listening, please consider doing that, because people who need to have a little bit more, off-road, it's not even really off-road, it's wet grass in the spring. This area right here gets pretty moist, and it's pretty easy if you have a lot of weight. Like if, for instance, my trailer sunk in, I was going to park it right there, but I parked it here because it was sinking in. But if you need to have that extra little bit of oomph on wet grass with a dually, with those tires, having a locker makes a big difference. It's definitely a nice little bit of oomph to add in with four-wheel drive. And anytime you can decrease the shock load and the abuse on your vehicle to get yourself out of trouble, that's why four-wheel drive is really nice to have. In my opinion, I can't imagine not having a four-wheel drive truck. Being able to throw it in four-wheel drive before you get stuck means that instead of shocking your vehicle and having to do abusive things to get it unstuck, you just kind of creepy crawl through the situation. In the same way, having the locker is another level of lowering the abuse on your vehicle by being able to get you through things without high RPM, without shocking your driveline. You don't need to treat a locker. For sure, it's harder on your axle shafts if you're abusing it. If you're doing some crazy high RPM stuff, it for sure is harder on your axle shafts. But if you're gingerly applying power, maintaining traction like you definitely can do with a locker, it definitely decreases the amount of load on all of your driveline. And that includes when you have both rear wheels pulling, especially when they have the weight of a trailer pushing down on them. You're not shock loading your front drive shaft, your transfer case, your front axle shafts as much. Of course, your pinion, your ring gear, all that stuff, all your components that make up your front drive portion. When you get more driven power from the rear because of your locker, it really, really helps. So a lot of us need to have that on our side for what we're doing. And that's why the compromise of, hey, an F350 single wheel fills a lot of voids, has a lot of capacity, and that is something that definitely is worth having about choosing an F350. But I will say that definitely when you get over 12,000 pounds, you just are not able to use the added power because you can easily pull 55, 65 mile an hour with a gas engine with as much weight as it needs to have. This truck is rated at about 18,000 pounds for both conventional and gooseneck. So this is kind of at the truck's rated limit, and the 7.3 easily handles the truck's rated limit. And let's just say you did have a diesel. When you do have a diesel, generally speaking, you're going to have, for sure, a little bit more gross combined vehicle weight rating, which means you can tow more, okay? This combination is not horsepower limited. So let's just say we had a diesel. We had, I think it's 18,900 pound conventional with a diesel, and like 21 to 22,000 pound gooseneck and fifth wheel rating for this exact same truck if it had a diesel. I would warn you that going any higher than kind of what we're towing right now, or pulling, let's just limit it to conventionals right now, because I have an extensive amount of experience with conventionals. I don't have a huge amount of experience with fifth wheels and with goosenecks. I mostly am using conventional trailers for the things that I do. So if you get any more weight than what we have going on right now, you are going a little higher than what this chassis is able to do, and therefore, what do you need the extra power for? I will say, if you are towing goosenecks and fifth wheels, I'm sure that the stability is going to improve from this combination, and you will feel more comfortable at 60, 65 mile an hour with a very heavy gooseneck or fifth wheel setup. Of course, over 20,000 pounds with a fifth wheel is a massive camper, and there's only a handful of those trailers that exist. And I'm going to bet that most of my viewers are not towing around anything over even 12,000 pound campers, to which the 7.3 will absolutely devour a 12,000 pound and under camper, fifth wheel conventional, and this chassis will absolutely feel very comfortable at 12,000 pounds and under, whether it be a fifth wheel or a conventional. So I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation about, why 6.7s are not a badge of honor. You do not need to pretend that you are somehow an inferior person because you have a gasser. And if anything, I'll counter with, you don't have a dually, so hyping up your diesel doesn't really mean that much because you're still capped at the same place I am. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Take care of yourselves and have a great day.